Hey everyone, I'm Anna and this is the R5 Leather Workshop. And today we're going to do 3 more projects that you can use scrap for. As right now this video is coming out just before the holidays, you might be like, oh no, I need some quick stocking stuffers or some quick gifts at the last minute. And if you're like me and you're doing leathercraft, you probably have scrap around. So these are things that could become gifts and things you can also use your scrap with. So with that, let's get started. So like I said, we're going to actually make 3 things today. So you're going to need some scrap for each of these items. The first one is we're going to make a super simple keychain. So I have a longer piece of scrap here and I have a split ring. These are pretty cheap. I would recommend maybe not buying them on Amazon. Try to seek out like Tandy Leather. I'd probably suggest Tandy because they sell a bag of split rings at a really good price. So if you're going to make a bunch of these, do it that way. This one I just actually cannibalized off another keychain that I had floating around. And then you'll need a strip of leather at least 1 inch long and at least 8 inches wide. So this is just a random piece of blue veg tan that I had floating around that's been milled. So that's for the first project. Project number 2 is going to be a cord keeper as a way to organize your cords. Now I did do a short about cord keepers already. It's a little more complex one. This one is a super fast one. I sell these at markets a lot as well. So you really just need a piece that can be 1 inch by 4 inches. So I have this piece here that we're going to use for that. And then we are also going to make a simple eyeglasses case. So I have a more complex pattern as well, but this one is super easy. You just put it in here. I'm going to show you all the steps for this and how to make the pattern for this one as well, which is why I'm not showing you the scrap, but you will need a piece of scrap for this as well. So we're going to start with the cord keeper. It's probably the easiest of these. So what you need to do is you just need to line up your piece. Mine's already got a straight edge on one side. And you're going to cut this 1 inch wide. So you're going to cut a 1 inch piece like that. So you're going to set this down and now you're going to measure this out to 4 inches long, which I did not do ahead of time. So I'm just going to mark this there and there, and you'll see why I'm doing it this way here in just a second. So you have your markings, and I'm just using my my 1 inch end punch here, and I'm going to put the end of the end punch at that mark. Now we've talked many times before, if you don't have an end punch, you can just find something small to curve off your edges and then just cut them. Big fan of the end punch. This is definitely one of those tools that I avoided for a while, and once I bought it, I didn't look back. So next thing with the cord keeper, you're going to need your hole punch. So you're going to need a set of snaps here. Now one of the things I'll say about attaching these pieces is I personally like to attach the snaps a little differently here. I found the easiest way for these cord keepers is to have them connect this way instead of around in a ring. So you have to think about that when you're connecting your snap pieces. So usually what I do is I usually do this one first. So I poke that there, flip it over, and put this piece, so these pieces always go together. The more button looking piece and the female side of that one. So you're gonna go, I always put it, like I said, on the nice leather side, and I flip it, and then I line everything up. You'll need snap tools. Most kits with snaps that you buy on Amazon will give you the tools too. And I've bought more snaps since, and these tools from Amazon have worked just fine for me. So you're gonna line it up. I also always like to do this particular side first because it's the easiest to mess up and I just like to get it over with. So I've talked before about this. I like to just kind of tap it in a little bit, and then I kind of go harder as it goes in. So there, that one's connected. So here was where I'm talking about how we're going to go this way. So this little knobby end here is the one you want to go here, and you want the back side of that one to go on the good leather side. That's actually counterintuitive to how you would normally put in a snap as far as like aesthetics, but this is just the way I personally like these going. And you just use that tool. There you go. You've made yourself a cord keeper. Okay. So there you go. Those are connected, and then you just snap it shut. If I'm giving these as gifts or selling these at markets, I always test them before I put them into the stock that I can sell. So, because if you get a bad snap or you hammered it wrong, they won't close properly. So that's a cord keeper. That's project number 1. Project number 2 is going to be a keychain. So there's lots of different things you can do with keychains, but this is kind of the simplest keychain that I do. Again, it makes for a really fast, easy gift, and you can also sell them, especially this simple, at a relatively cheap price at markets as well. And it's just, again, another good way to get rid of your scrap. So what we're going to do is we are going to measure this. Again, we're going to use a 1-inch strip, so I'm going to cut that first. And then I typically, depending on how big you want your loop to be, so what we're going to end up doing is looping this piece into kind of this shape. This one's way too big, but I'm just kind of showing you what we're looking to do. So what I would say is you need to decide how big you want your loop to be. I tend to do about 8 inches. Okay, that's 6 inches. And another 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. There's 8 inches. So there's our piece we're working with. And again, we're going to hole punch this with our strap-in punch. Okay, so there's our strap. So how I usually do these is I pull this through, and then I fold over a little tab, and then I fold the other piece up. I've seen this done both ways, where you can do it this way. Actually, now that I think about it, that's how I usually do it. So I usually do it like this, where the longer piece is under this smaller piece. And from here, what you can do is, I don't usually glue these. I usually just clip it in a corner, or sometimes I just hold it and make sure it's where I want it. And then I just put this in the center and punch a hole. And you have to hammer it quite a few times to make sure it goes through. You got 3 layers of leather there. So then all you need, a rivet. Also, by the way, something else you could do, which I have done sometimes, is I buy a concho, which is another, they're like decorative pieces. I'll try to put a picture over here so you can see what a concho looks like. And they often connect the same way. And you can put that there for a little extra decorative touch. So just gonna put that on, and then you're gonna punch it in with your machine or however you connect rivets. And there we go. Simple keychain. You can also do, this one is super simple, obviously. You could like narrow it down at this connection point. You could stitch this all. There's lots of different things you can do with a keychain, but this one is just like super simple, do with scraps. You can sell these relatively cheaply at market, stuff like that. So that is our second project. That's a keychain. So the last one is our eyeglasses case. Now this one is, quote, the most complicated one we're doing today, but it really isn't that complicated. So the first thing you actually need to do here is create a pattern. Now you can do this two ways. So this one that was made is, I based it off of a really cheap one that looked like this to create my pattern. They were like cheap vinyl ones that my husband got when he ordered new prescription glasses. So what you need to do is you just need to take this and you need to get something to either make a paper pattern, or you can do this directly on the leather itself, but I'd recommend doing it on the back side if you're going to just do it right on the leather. I have this piece of leather here. I'll show you how to do it directly on leather. I'm going to put some weights down here because this leather is rather curled. So you just need to take this down. One, make sure you have enough leather. Okay? And what you need to do is hold it down and you'll just trace it. The reason I would recommend doing this on the back side is that if your lines are off or you make a mistake, it won't be seen once you stitch this together. So I'm going to hold this down and I'm just going to trace this out like that. And then you can kind of use where you started to know that you got it right. Push this down. Make sure you're pushing it flat if it's bubbled up like this one is. All right. So there's your pattern. Super easy. All you need to do now is cut this out and we'll go on to the next step. So I already had a piece cut out previously from a separate project, so I don't want to ruin up that other piece of leather for something. So I had already cut this out for a market and I just didn't get around to making all that I'd cut out. So this one's already cut out. So all you need to do now is you'll need to line everything up. It may not line up perfectly, but you can always trim after the fact. I just like to see where it's going to go. See how off things might be in my cutting. Okay, so I can kind of see, oh, I'm going to have to do some trimming down here probably. I like to make sure the upper part is as lined up as possible. I'd rather trim, I like to make sure this is as lined up as possible at the top and rather trim at the bottom than at the top. That's just my own personal preference. I may need to trim a little bit at the top on this one though. Okay, so from here, what you can do is, now that you kind of know what you're dealing with, you can do two things. If you're going to hand stitch this, I would recommend you putting some Ted's tape or glue down here to hold it together and then punch everything out like we've done in the past. If you have a sewing machine and you want to use the sewing machine, I would probably say you can get away with just clipping it. That's typically what I do. I worry a little bit about some glue coming through, I guess, more and more, because hammering a lot hurts my elbow. I do tend to lean towards the sewing machine more and more. If it can be done on my machine, I will. By the way, this particular leather that I'm using here is very thin. If you have a standard fabric machine, I talked about this a little bit in my video on making the homemade notebook cover, you can get away potentially, as long as you have a leather needle, like a heavy duty needle, you probably could stitch this in your standard machine. So just something to think about, especially with this project. If you're trying to do some quick last minute Christmas gifts and you're using a thinner leather, you may be able to do it on your machine. So just something to think about. Oh, something I should also say about using a standard machine, you need to make sure you're using a wider stitch length as well on a standard machine if you're going to do that. Probably something over 5 millimeters. So just something to be aware of. So with that, I'm gonna go stitch up this really quick on my machine, and then I'll come back and show you the last finishing touches. Here is my... So this is done. Again, hand stitching like we've always talked about. Even with the machine, I do need to burn off my edges there. So from here, you're going to want to trim up any areas that are uneven. In the end, this came out better than I thought. It lined up better. It's almost perfect. So just kind of smooth out the edges. You can also, if you want to dye the edges, you can. You could sand them down and burnish them if you wanted. You know, again, just up to you. Maybe a little tokonol wouldn't be the worst thing in the world here. Oh, I gotta stitch this side off. Okay. The only last thing I would say on this that you would want to maybe do is, again, I'm gonna actually punch a hole just on the inside of my stitch here, and I'm putting it really close. Like, it's almost gonna pop it if I was to go off a little bit. And I'm gonna put a rivet right here. You can see that one was put here as well. The reason I'm putting a rivet here is because this is a big tension point for taking glasses in and out. And so by putting the rivet there, it just makes sure that that's not gonna tear. So you put your rivet in and again, punch that. And there you go. Project number 3, done. Again, super easy project, maybe a little more labor intensive, especially if you're gonna hand stitch this, but it does require, and it does require a slightly bigger piece of scrap, but still, super easy gift to throw together for someone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you now have some ideas for some quick ideas of things you can make, either for market or because I'm filming this at the this is coming out, or because this video is coming out right before Christmas. If you need those last minute stocking stuffers, you've got some options that you can give to friends and family and also show off your new leather crafting skills. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the new year.